Hey everyone, how's it going?
Hello, hello. End of day Friday. You all still awake and surviving? Show of hands. All right, a couple thumbs up. That's always good. Some grins at least. Okay.
I think they're in the end game towards the weekend, Kyle.
I see what you did there. That was good.
All right, so I'm Kevin Owaki. This is Kyle Weiss. We're going to be talking about Gitcoin's Endgame, which is basically a resource that we're putting together about where Gitcoin is going for the next 7 to 10 years. And we're going to take you through Gitcoin, what we are now, what is our end game, and then we want to introduce some new information about what we're doing in the mid game for the next 15 minutes or so. So how many people in the audience have heard of Gitcoin? All right.
All right,
About half of the audience. We empower communities to build, fund, and protect their shared needs. We are an impact DAO and a protocol DAO. We act as a social and educational shelling point for experiments in regenerative crypto economics, most notably quadratic funding in the Ethereum ecosystem. Over the last 24 months, we have rewritten Gitcoin from top to bottom, from being a company to now becoming a protocol DAO, which has the following products. Gitcoin Grant Stack, which is an end-to-end solution for your grants needs. We're taking what worked for Ethereum and the Ethereum Foundation in building their ecosystem last cycle and are now making it available to any EVM-based community to fund their needs with Gitcoin Grants. Gitcoin Grants is an end-to-end web app that you can deploy in your community to implement grants in your ecosystem. And underneath of it is powered by Allo Protocol, which stands for Allocation Protocol, an open source protocol that enables communities to efficiently and transparently allocate pooled capital. Gitcoin Passport, which is a privacy preserving civil resistance aggregator. And PGN, which is an L2 for public goods projects to earn funding in their ecosystem. And GTC, the governance token for the Gitcoin network. So far, Gitcoin has allocated over $50 million worth of funding so far. And this plan charts a course for 100x growth to hopefully $5 billion worth of impact over the coming decade. But that's our plan. Endgame's beginnings is that in 2021, we launched a DAO. And the idea here was that a DAO is a better vehicle for Gitcoin's products and mission than a company could ever be. And the goal was to build a decentralized modular set of protocols that would usher Gitcoin into the future. But a DAO launch is a Cambrian explosion of ideas and community interest, and without careful planning, the will of the community turns into a mob instead of a single sentient force for good. And Gitcoin was no different. We spent months building in different directions, especially in 2021. We had lots of contributor churn due to unqualified participation and the headiness of the bull market, ineffective leadership and strategy definition, and ineffective definition of success. And if you've been in DAOs, then you've probably experienced similar things. But Gitcoin is deeply protopian. It gets better every quarter. And 2 years later, we are merging into our end game. Endgame is the plan co-created bottoms up from the DAO and synthesized by people who are in the DAO in order to make Gitcoin successful in the future. So over the next 7 to 10 years, our plan is to crystallize our direction, goals, and values and unlock new potential of alignment of outcomes and definitions of success. The endgame plan at a high level is this. In the mid-game, we want to stabilize our roadmaps, teams, and DAO burn to be normalized to high measurable ROI investments. We want to be thriving financially, socially, and technically. Gitcoin will continue to be a model for sustainability and excellence. After we've accomplished those goals, we'll be decentralized across governance, protocol advancement, with token holder representation and in the protocols. And we aim for this to be a DAO that is lucrative for those participating with their time and with their social capital, and for those with ambition and ability to invest socially, emotionally, and technologically. So let me hand this over to Kyle, who's going to tell us more about financial sustainability at Gitcoin.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So we're going to zoom in a little bit. Kevin talked about sort of the mid-game of both thriving and stabilizing. Much of the team is stabilized, much of the product is stabilized, which is fantastic. As we think about the mid-game components, there's 4 core components that we're rolling out. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about financial sustainability, just kind of given the crowd and audience here. So in this particular case, token economics are things that are sort of the confluence of governance systems that hopefully build defensible and healthy networks, right? Like you're trying to come together as a group to lead to some sort of collective outcome. And in this particular case, GTC is a token that Gitcoin has, and it offers people the ability to sort of govern and interact with the protocols as well as the DAO itself that serve all of the community participants. So how we actually use GTC today is very much in our Gitcoin grants program, how we allocate capital. It's rewards and contributions for contributors. And a lot of this is opportunity for folks to use GTC as a community script, like your Chuck E. Cheese tokens of sorts, based on the particular protocols they have and actions we want people to take within those protocols. So much of our goal from the governance perspective is to make sure that we're pushing as many strategic decisions back to the community as possible. And we want core contributors, myself, Kevin, other people inside our organization, to really be a major voice, but not be the ultimate deciders. And so there's all sorts of things that we have to do to incentivize participation inside of these votes, but then make sure that our voices are not always the loudest. So governance models are structured accordingly so that the votes are set up such that we can't co-opt the network or do things amongst just DAO core contributors, but instead contributors actually are the ones that get to drive a lot of the decision making within the organization. So I get asked this question frequently. Why do people want to own GTC? We'll sort of name the elephant in the room, why someone would want to own almost any altcoin they believe, and that's speculation. But for Gitcoin, it does go much beyond speculation. A lot of this does come down to the decision making and the frameworks I talked a little bit about. Deciding on things like our grants rounds, how much capital we should allocate, under what percentages. So Gitcoin goes through and allocates about $1 million a quarter right now into different funding pools, we call them. Those particular pools could be for NFT projects or different public goods projects, core infrastructure, open source software. The community are the ones who are voting and deciding what weights and percentages to allocate towards which of those pools. We have our Allo protocol. All of the funding that flows through has a potential for fee share split. Curation of grants is another one. As more and more people sign up to receive money, it's really hard to understand which of those projects are good projects, which should actually receive the funding. So encouraging the community to help us curate is one of the next mechanisms that is being built out. And then also formalizing partnerships between aligned organizations. We want to make sure that a rising tide raises all boats for those that are funding public goods and helping build open source software solutions. And so GTC is a mechanism to help us do that as well. So I'm going to fly through this one a little bit. This is incentivizing actions. We want to reward positive sum contributions, make sure that those that are in the DAO and participating also have upside in that thing that they're helping build. And then also amplify matching pool. So the more GTC someone has and sort of commits to being a good actor in the space, the more funding that they receive in return in building out the ecosystem that they're a part of. So with sustainability and longevity in mind, about 6 months ago, we took a much deeper look at what we're calling these cost of capital and these cost of allocation models. Within each of these models, one of the things that's very difficult for a DAO and most organizations to decide is, should we actually build this thing? Do the token economics work out such that if we invest $1 million in this particular project over a 6-month time period, we will actually have the revenue or we'll have the market upside to capture as a result of that investment? So in this particular case, there's 5 steps to this cost of capital model. And the very first is very basic for any of you that are familiar with how cost of capitals work. You need to figure out what your risk-free rate of return potentially is. So in this case, we looked at the SPY 500. We knew that they had a risk premium of about 5.64%. And Gitcoin's risk-free rate in the beta on Gitcoin was around 1.5. So what that means is, as we step through this, now that we understand some of what the risk-free rate is, that means if I had $1 million and I was going to put it in the S&P 500, I would expect a 5% return on that money. And if instead the DAO says, hey, we want you to fund this particular project, I want to make darn sure that I'm going to make more than 5% on that investment over some particular time period. Otherwise, for the community, it doesn't make sense for them to invest in that project. So what we have to do is, now that we know what our risk-free rate is, we want to go through and make sure we're understanding the value creation opportunity that the token mechanism is creating for us. And so in this particular case, Gitcoin has Passport, the identity tool that Kevin described. We started to build out models where we could show both what the growth rate was on Passport, but also the implications of building out this token economic model. And so in this particular case, we are predicting Passport's growth at a beta of 1, and then the amount of passports that are being unstaked in this particular case. So this is a staking model to prove one's identity and reputation, which then has programmatic slashing built in as well. So as a team came together, they were coming to us saying, we want to fund this. We think this is going to be valuable for the organization. We can bring utility to GTC, and we can also solve this problem of helping people define their unique humanity. So we stepped through, got to step 2 here, and as we understood, OK, this was the rate in which we would expect GTC to be removed from market, and also the rate in which users are going to be using GTC to solve that particular problem. So the token staking model has much more detail in feasibility, what we expect the failure rate to be, a particular discount rate. The discount rate in this case is incredibly high because we didn't have confidence that the team was actually going to be able to achieve the goals that they said they did. But within the workbook and inside the models that are outlined in Endgame, you can go through and modify a lot of the intakes here. So what this team came back to us and said was, based on the investment, I think the investment they were looking for was actually closer to $6 million, $6 or $7 million over a 5-year time period. The net present utility value they predicted was around $122 million, I think on a 10-year arc. So if we give them $5 million, they're sort of expecting $122 million to come back based on the investment that they're making. Now, that's still with a large risk profile, and that was the thing that the DAO was able to get behind and say, like, yeah, this is a project that's worth investing in. The net present utility value is high enough for us, and so we want to go ahead and move forward. So one of the final pieces is, as we break out that investment, that $5 to $6 million that they were looking for, we want to make sure that we're keeping track of all the different costs that they have and feeding that back into the cost of capital model for next time when someone else comes up with another idea that they want to take on inside of the token economic models that they're presenting. So this was a very fast, but hopefully a helpful deep dive into just one of the components that we have on Endgame here. I think, like we mentioned, the mid-game has been focused on both stabilization, but then also acceleration of a lot of the team's progress. And it's through building out models like these we can actually make educated decisions and make sure that we're building in the right direction together. And the cost of capital models actually help us inform those particular decision-making pieces. So Kevin, I think we've got maybe just one more slide up here, encouraging people to go check it out. Any other wisdom that you'd impart as to where we're headed and what we're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working on Gitcoin on and off for the last 6 years, and it's evolved a lot over the last 6 years. I think the next 6 years we're going to see an articulation of where Gitcoin's going that's for the first time available to everyone and not just in my head. So I'm really excited about endgame.gitcoin.co. We are going to be synthesizing from different parts of the network where Gitcoin is going. And I think that the story is still being written of how we achieve our mission of funding what matters in the Web3 ecosystem, and then all digital public goods, and then hopefully crossing the chasm into physical public goods. Gitcoin is still growing. It's I think what we're trying to do is further up the stack than DeFi protocols or art communities or layer 2s. And we're kind of occupying a space that I think won't mature for the next 5 or 10 years. And we want to make sure that Gitcoin is thriving over that time horizon. And so this is the beginning of a conversation and an evolution of what Gitcoin's roadmap is. And I'm really excited to share it with all of you. Check it out at endgame.gitcoin.co, and looking forward to evolving this resource together.
There's lots of other templates on the cost of capital model if you're interested in exploring those, also at Endgame. So the model itself, as well as some really basic budgeting, helping teams figure out what their sort of workflow costs are. But we're going to continue to build out those resources here shortly. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Kyle.